Just got back in from the gym and I want to share with you guys something that happened on the way there. What I normally do to get to the gym, it's about 6 kilometers away, which is about a little over 3 miles. I normally walk there and back or use the trip there and back to the gym to get cardio. So on the way there, sometimes I normally have music in, then I'll be doing like intermediate sprints on the way there, kind of run for 100 yards or different kind of things. I'll use the light poles. I'll say, okay, I'll run for the first one light pole, then walk one, run two, walk two, run three, walk three, and then do it back down again, two, three, and then walk the rest of. I've divided the roads up into different sections. So there's different ways and things I kind of change it up just to make the whole commute more interesting and more engaging. So it's not just repetitive, even though I use pretty much the same route. There's a few different routes you can kind of diverge in different ways. But this time I had my music in. Was walking down the last stretch to the place. So it's Parklands Road, and I was listening to I, Robot, which is a great book by Isaac Asimov. I'm going through the what's it called the series of the I, Robot and the Machine series. I think it's the Robot series and the the Foundation series of Isaac Asimov. I'll talk about that more in a separate video. But this story, back to this point. It's you'll see when I get to the story. It's a touchy subject for me. This is going to be in my series of Hands Up, Don't Hit, which is a series about peaceful parenting. And I'll ask you guys some questions probably during this talk and definitely at the end of it. And you'll see it kind of just, I've been thinking about this since it happened. It happened maybe, say, about 4 hours ago, 5 hours ago, around there. And it's the general question is peaceful parenting a privilege? Is that something that's I mean, it's the idea of peaceful parenting, if you guys are aware of. To me, I came to peaceful parenting from the non aggression principle, just my as an outlook, just don't initiate aggression against people. That's don't initiate force against people. Um, and then you apply this to just your life in general. My life view goes into anarcho capitalism because I think the state is inherently the difference between the state and the regular governments is the state itself has an inherent it has a monopoly on violence in any given area. So there's that implied violence behind the state to enforce those laws and things like that. So I just find that just generally morally wrong to have a situation like that. It's going to lead to certain bad things down the line. And then now you go and you look at how do I deal with my friends and people in my life. And I think the non-aggression principle has helped me with that. I don't like to lie to people. I like to just get into relationships and friendships and acquaintances and just approach people in that manner, in that kind of way. It's not, you can't defend yourself because defense is not aggression because that's somebody initiating against you. Not protect people who need to be protected, who's somebody who's being harmed. You step in and do something. That's those are different terms. That's not aggression. That's a different kind of section. Now, when it comes to parenting, in my opinion, I just think peaceful parenting just has so many different positives. There's just I haven't really found any good arguments against peaceful parenting, against not hitting your children, against not lying to your children, against not yelling at your children, not shaking them, not using your larger self on them, and using fear to parent. Because people say, "Oh, but how are you going to discipline your kid?" And my whole idea is, fear isn't discipline. That's the point. Because if you do that, you're not necessarily going to discipline that child by engaging in aggression, by yelling. You could get somebody to stop something, but it's not going to necessarily discipline them. It's not necessarily going to teach the kid something different. Okay, so 4 minutes in, haven't even got to the question, haven't got to the story, but here we go. Here we go into the story. So I'm walking down that last stretch, and I start hearing. I kind of see somebody looking across the street. I'm on one side of the street, and I see somebody looking across the street, and I normally, even if I have my music in or have something in, I normally keep my eye on the circle. I just really like looking around. If you check my Instagram, I'll just see things that I find like small flowers and things like all these other things. I like just keeping my eyes on the circle, keeping my eyes open and looking around, even if I'm engaged and my mind is engaged and with something else in that kind of sense. So I'm looking and seeing somebody looking across the street. I start hearing faintly because the audio recording on this one's not that loud. With audiobooks, it's really not that high normally, so I can still hear. And I'm hearing like a noise like that, and I'm kind of looking. And then I look across the street, and I see what looks like It's three women and a smaller person, so I'm guessing that's a little child. But the wailing sound seems like it's coming from further back. It didn't really seem like it's coming from these people who were just right across the street from me. And then I look and there's a few people kind of looking at them, and it's two ladies. They were kind of dressed in these in this neighborhood. This was a Parklands neighborhood. It's a neighborhood where there's a lot of the Indian diaspora. The people, a lot of them are, I don't necessarily diaspora because they've been here pre-colonial times. When England colonized Kenya, they brought people from India because India was an older colony, so they brought them over here to help them kind of run the country, help them do some certain administrative things and other things. And a lot of Indians also came over as merchants and things like that to take advantage of this new place of these new let's call these new customers and open new restaurants and stores and bring new goods that weren't necessarily there for the locals. And they consider themselves as Kenyan, I'd say, as any American who's moved to the United States of America, who's been there for generations. You know, there's people who say, oh, we're Italian American, but they consider themselves American, but because they've been there for generations. They were there to build the country. It's multi-generational, and that's how it is in Parklands, where majority of the Indians live there. But these are middle class or upper middle class, and in Kenya, even just middle class in general, most people in the middle class or upper middle class can afford house help. And in this area, it's normally upper middle class and above. So there's house help. So these two ladies look like they're dressed in house help. The third lady, who I notice now, is kind of wearing a bit of Muslim type of clothes. Like it's a bit of a hijab, but different kind of colors and things like that, and a jacket or something like that. It wasn't necessarily a full head covering. And this smaller person who seems to be being held by, I'm noticing now, it's the clothing has kind of been tied around her head, and she's kind of leaning back. And I notice now she's the one yelling, and I notice the lady holding, the woman holding her, has this long stick. It's a long thin stick, maybe around a bit thicker than my finger around there. It's like the circumference of it, and then it still had some leaves on the end of it, and she's holding it back, like, and she's yelling at the kid. And I decide I'm going to cross the road and see what's up. So this is the first question. Like, would you engage in this situation? I'm like, okay, this person is seems to be hitting this other person. It looked like I couldn't tell if this was a grown up. She was also wearing kind of like a head covering thing, but she had other clothes. So I approached them and I just asked him in Swahili. My Swahili is not the best. It's conversational. There's some parts I don't really understand and get, but in general, I can understand just regular parts. So I engage them. I'm not assuming, maybe they spoke English, but in some situations, you kind of assume that you can get in there with Swahili. With Kenya, there's a lot of different languages spoken. There's 42 different tribes. But when you come to Nairobi, most people speak at least Swahili, which is the lingua franca. And also English is spoken by some people, but I could have tried and seen if they can speak some English. But most people normally speak their tribal tongue and Swahili, or English and Swahili. So that's the kind of crossover thing that you can meet together in. So I get there and I just say, okay, what's going on here? I'm like, don't hit this child. I look at the child and I notice that, okay, she looks like this lady who's holding her, this woman who's holding her. I don't want to say lady because of the behavior and the actions. It's anyway. So I see that there's a similarity. But I notice in the person who's wailing, it's just a constant wail. It's just like, just going on like that, just a constant drone of it. And I notice she seems to be a little, I don't want to say feeble-minded, mentally handicapped. There's something with her. She doesn't, you can tell some of these things with the features, the facial features and things like this. She looked like she had some kind of issue with her. And I'm saying, okay, just don't hit this person. Like hitting, like I'm saying this in Swahili, I was like, usimchape na hiyo. So I kind of just step in there. And then the two ladies who were the two, I guess they were ladies, because they weren't involved. But hey, I'll switch between ladies and women. The two women who were there, the house help people, they looked like they were wearing kind of an apron and things like that. That looks like the standard thing that some people normally get for their house help. And the house help normally comes in and they actually live with the families. They raise the kids. They're there in the house. They cook. They clean. They live there. Some house help actually end up bringing their kids to live in that house. They only have it's still called an SQ, a severance squatter. It's still actually called that in Kenya. It's a typical thing to call it. you'll see apartments. You can go online and actually look at some of the apartments being listed, see some of the houses being listed, even some of the places on what's it called on things like Airbnb in Kenya. You'll see it's listed like, oh, it's an entire servants' quarter. Most houses are built that way. Apartments, you'll see like, okay, you have these typical normal looking apartments that you'd find anywhere in the world, but then in the listing to be like separate servants quarter because they'll have a section in the entire apartment complex that's there. So each apartment who has a servant, who has a servant, a house help, a house girl, it's normally a house girl. In this kind of situation, it's 90% is women and 10% of you'd have men, and they normally have drivers, and sometimes they'll have drivers, they'll have groundskeepers and things like that. But you'll have a separate place, so they'll be able to help you in your house, but then at night they'll have a separate wing in the whole apartment complex. So anyway, they were there, and then I started asking them, what's going on in this? What's going on? And then the mother of this person starts explaining, and I hear her saying, "Ntakunyonga alafu nitakuacha tu hapa." That means I'll strangle you and I'll just leave you here. Nitakurusha tu hapa. And he's pointing at the bushes, and I was like, wow, like I know I've stepped into a situation where this person was probably being hit. The stick was already in the air. The child was wailing. So I'm trying to collect information. I'm trying to understand what's going on in this situation. What's I mean, I'm just telling the person, like, I know hitting the kid is not a positive thing. That's something I've researched into it. I've looked into it. I've looked at the effects that has on a child. It just doesn't work. It's just not a solution to getting the person to do what you want them to do. It might get someone to do what you want to do at the time, but I'm thinking the ongoing effect of that hitting the person is not going to solve the situation itself. The situation that led to you feeling the need to hit this person is not going to be solved by you hitting that person. It's going to exacerbate it. It's going to continue that situation further and further. So I noticed this person. She looked like she was dirty, like she'd be in the dust, she'd be on the ground or something. I start smelling, and it smells like a bit like she might have smelled a bit like feces and things like that. But there was a light smell of that, and it was coming from the girl. And I was wondering what's going on with this situation. And I start talking to them, say, okay, what's going on? They start explaining. The mom starts explaining that this girl, she comes out to the house. She goes down the street and she's pointing down to the High Ridge area, which is the end of the road where the shopping complex is, a commercial area where the gym I was going to is, a Diamond Plaza area. And down there, there's normally some kids running around there, younger kids, ranging from I think 5 to low teens, and they normally beg for money. They ask for money. They ask for things. They say, "Hey, there's this idea." They just follow the cars or people walking by, and she was saying that this girl was down there begging. She found her there, and she's trying to get her from there back to home. And I think home was maybe a kilometer up the road or something. There's more of kind of like a slum area. Now this is the lower class, like lower class, might be lower middle class, lower class in the area. There's these. Nairobi is a strange place, and it's not Nairobi is a strange place because it's a similar thing in the United States of America, where Washington D.C., some places in Washington D.C., definitely Montgomery County, where I went to high school and middle school and lived there, was Montgomery County is one of the wealthiest cities or counties in the country of the United States of America. Yet you have places in DC that are sometimes a murder capital. People are dying. It's like the ghetto in there. It's straight out slum. And you have the president's house, the White House there. And it's something I noticed back when I was still living in the United States of America, like how this was during, I think, Clinton's time, or maybe even Bush. Like, yeah, Clinton, I think it was even 94 or something. It was like in the 90s I realized this. I was like, why is the United States sending the military across the ocean to other countries to try and do things there, supposedly, to keep people safe, when there's people getting shot this walking distance away from the White House on a regular basis? Americans. So it was just these different things you just kind of think and what's going on. And again, with the peaceful parenting, I've kind of understood how that violence in certain inner city areas, it's part of the violence also I've realized now that goes into different forms of abuse and neglect and things like that of people who may not have been hit, but people who support the government and support this authority using force in a certain way and things like that. And that will also come back, I think, in later in this story. So let's get back to this thing. Oh. So in Nairobi, there's these different slums that are kind of in these areas where you'll see like a Mercedes, you'll see like a Bentley, you'll see a Porsche Cayenne, you'll see these really expensive vehicles driving by these slums where there's like 1,000 or these 1,000 of these homes don't even cost as much as like a wheel on this vehicle because it's this corrugated metal, and you see these two sides of existence just slamming together in these odd ways. And okay, so she's telling me she's trying to get her back home, but she's not listening. She's saying, "Kama najaribu kumpeleka ananiuma." She's saying, when I try to take her, she's biting me, and I'm like, wow. Like, so at this point, I'm realizing like, okay, this is a lot I've jumped into. And maybe it's a lot, but I just at that point, for some personal reason that going on in my life, things that I've been thinking about, something's going on in my own life as well. It's like I can't just walk by. I know I'm going to the gym. I know even some of me is thinking like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? I'm just like, you just don't hit her. I mean, what's going on? So she's saying, okay, this person comes out. The kids from there come to my house and they get this girl and they get her to go out. She's gone down there and sometimes she goes down there and she begs. And he was like, that's not something someone from my family does. We should do this. Like, I hear somebody comes and tells me like, oh, this person has found your daughter down here. I find she's gone. Sometimes she's gone and disappeared for a few days. And this is what I'm saying. She's somebody who said she's a bit feeble-minded. So she can speak a bit, but she's not completely capable, completely mentally there. She explains that she also has a younger child at home that's very sick, that can hardly walk, that's also handicapped in that way, physically handicapped. And she just has these struggles, and she's like, what am I supposed to do? She's refusing to come. These two ladies are saying, yeah, they've tried. We've seen her trying to bring this girl up the road. This girl is punching her. This girl is hitting her. She's refusing. So what are we supposed to do? And then they start saying, lazima umchape, lazima huyo achapwe apelekwe nyumbani. So they're saying she has to be hit. She has to be hit so she can understand. Lazima asikie hiyo uchungu ndio anaweza enda. So he's saying she has to feel that pain that she can go. And I'm like, that's not, I was telling her, I was trying to tell him it's not going to fix this, it's not going to fix anything. And they say, sasa tuambie tufanye nini? Nataka tufanye nini? And it was like, Miss Joy. And this is another question. For you to tell somebody something is wrong, do you have to wait until you have a solution in order to tell them that thing is wrong? I know it definitely helps, and I'm going to try my best to find better solutions to kind of offer in these kind of places where, but if somebody says 2 plus 2 multiplied by 256 divided by 15 to the 215th power is 4, I can tell them that's not 4. And then I'm like, okay, what's the answer? I'm like, I don't know the answer, but it's not 4. I can tell them, if you try and actually solve that situation, don't put down 4 because that's going to be wrong. But if they tell me, okay, I'm going to put down 4 unless you give me the answer, then what do you do in that situation? It's like, okay, I don't have the answer, but I know it's not 4. Like, I know that. So in this situation, I'm like, look, hitting the kid is not the solution, in my opinion. I mean, that's a bad thing. Right now, that's a bad thing to do. I mean, I can't really think of a positive situation where hitting the kid in this kind of situation is. Now, I know, she's saying, she starts explaining more and more that the kid's at home. She's mentioned this kid is not listening. Then she starts kind of getting the kid, and I get the stick out of her hand because she something happens with the kid, and I tell her, he hits the kid, and I pull the stick out of the mother's hand, and I say, "Usimchape, it's not going to solve anything." The kid kind of moves around. She goes to the ground. She's just yelling. A few other people come by. This whole time, some people are walking by. There's matatus and buses passing by on the road. This is on the side of the road. People are driving by, walking by. And there's different kinds of people walking by. Some Indian people walking by. Some people stop and ask. This tall white guy walks by. And this is one thing. There's definitely a thing. In some cultures, it's definitely more positive, where there's more peaceful parenting. And I think those cultures definitely do better. I think that's one of the things that you can check and see. You can see who parents their kids in a more peaceful way, and I think you'll find those societies and those cultures are doing better. Now, with this whole talk, with this whole conversation, that's what I'm saying. Is it a privilege? Do you have to achieve certain levels of safety and certain levels of advancement and certain levels of thought before you get to the point where you can actually be like, okay, we can afford to be so parent? Is that a privilege? Is that a first world privilege? Is that the kind of thing that comes after these other things are dealt with? Um, it's so you get in this situation. I start telling these women like, look, I understand that I'm not really necessarily giving you a solution. I understand if you leave this girl, you're saying she's going to go back. You can't just walk off and she'll be there. I understand you as a mother are trying to help this person. You're not trying to hurt this person. You're at the point in your life where you think the only way for me to get this person home, which you consider is more positive than her being out there, is by hitting this person with a stick. And she was hitting him around the neck and the head. And the second time she hit her in the legs, and you see the leaves flying out. And it's just, this is a gruesome situation. And I tell those women, I'm like, look, I understand that this isn't a situation where I'm giving you definitely solutions. I'm just saying, don't hit this person. I'm here to try to stop that from happening. And I say, look, if we're in a situation where I'm trying to get you guys to stop hitting this girl, and then I decide to pick up a stick because you're not doing what I want you guys to do, and I start hitting you guys, what would happen? So the police would come get me. They understand that that interaction is not a positive interaction. It's not a situation where, like, yes, just because I want you to do something, I can hit you. Because if I want you guys to stop, if I did start hitting them, they would stop. But is that a solving the solution? Is that teaching them? Is that making them understand that hitting a kid is not a positive thing? So more people start coming by. This other lady comes by. These two women come by, and they kind of see me stop. We're kind of stopped now. We're kind of this girl is still wailing a bit. They stop. They start explaining. The mother starts explaining again to these other people, and she's kind of had some success in moving her a bit up the road into this kind of cut off in the road with a bus stop. And she's kind of had some success in moving her a bit without the stick. The stick is out of her hand at this point. And and they start explaining. And then the mother starts explaining to this other person. And they go into the tribal tongue, I think. And there's like a tribal tongue that I don't understand. And this is another issue. I wish everyone in the world could speak one language. That we at least learn one language, that we have a lingua franca in the world. So there's at least one language in situations like this we can try and communicate in a level where we can actually understand each other enough. Because my Swahili was kind of limited in going to some of the reasoning that I would have probably tried to attempt in a situation like this. But they start talking, and then this new woman, she's a heavier set woman, and this other person with her, and she's like, "Huyu anatakiwana achapwe. Lazima uchape this person." And this is the thing, it's a common thing. It's still a very common thing in Kenyan culture to beat your kids. For me, that's one of the reasons I don't think I can really be part of the culture in large here. I know some people have definitely changed that. Maybe it's, people say it's all to you to change it. Maybe the people who actually can change it have the option of leaving the culture, and they leave and they don't stay here enough to actually pass on. And there's definitely more I think I can possibly do to help communicate and help kind of give better options to people in order to do this. Because one thing I've kind of thought, I just realized this later, was early on, was if you're kind of getting in a situation where you're dealing with your kid, I was thinking this might be a good question to ask yourself as a parent. Now, some of you might be parents out there. Is this a positive question, or just in general, anyone can answer this question, anyone can participate in this thought experiment? I was thinking, if you as a parent are doing something, think, would you as a parent, before you do something, if you came home and found out that a relative or a friend was doing that to your child, would you be okay with it? That should be something you think in your mind before you do something. And to me, I thought that would be a simple thing to make people understand, like, don't do X, Y, Z to your child. But when you have a situation where you can hit this kid in public, people walk by, nobody says anything, some people come by and support you. This other woman starts saying, let's move mtoto achapwe. Like that, the mother was saying, look, there's another kid at home. You could tell she was getting frustrated. This other woman says, let her your kid, let her your mti. She grabs the stick that was there before and starts hitting the kid. And I get in there, I I push them apart and I say, look, because for me I was thinking like, oh, that's a thing to say, but this mother was okay with enough. This person seemed to be a complete random. I don't know if they knew each other before. I don't think they knew each other before. But this lady came in, had a talk with this mother a bit for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes about what was going on. She already started saying this kid should be beaten. She was like, if this was my kid, I would be really beating them. She grabs the stick and starts beating the girl. Like, on the side of the street. And I'm just like, so I jump in and stop that. And I'm a bit, I'm just a bit at a loss of what to do in this situation. I know part of me is thinking like, why am I even here? Like, should I just go? Like, and I'm like, the girl already at this point has seen like, okay, at least this person has stopped. There's other people who have now come in and it's like, am I supposed to jump in? And like she said, okay, I've tried to put this girl on a bus, on a matatu so we can go home. She's not doing it. And of course, I'm already thinking like, look, this girl has been hit before. And I told the kid, because when she started pulling her out, I could see the whole situation, what you're saying, Atakuuma. She's trying to bite. Because she had a different kind of piece of cloth and she got that. So that the girl herself had one of those kind of head covering things, one of the full head scarf. It was a bit of head covering. And the mom would try to grab the hand and she wouldn't take the hand. So she grabbed her, pulled her by the kind of thing, and it was kind of holding her back. So it pulled her this way, and then the girl would be trying to bite the hands. And you could see that frustration and that anger and just building up with. So she was telling me the girl is not going to go. The girl started kind of punching back at the mom. And it's at the situation where she said, then the other women are like, unaona, and I'm gonga. She's hitting her. Then I was like, but that kid learned that from where? I was like, huyu mtoto alijua hiyo kitu kutoka wapi? Si alifundishwa yeye, ni sisi tulifundisha watoto vile kuchapa watu. Ameona kama wewe umekasirika unachapa watu. He says, she's seen that when you're angry, you hit people. Because when the parents are angry, they hit her. When people in the community are angry, they hit other people. So she sees that, and then she learns that, and then she does it out there. And again, she's also a bit feeble-minded. She said some words, but you could tell she's not necessarily getting things all the way. But you get to the situation where I'm like, look, she learned this behavior. So she must know also that if she goes home, it's not that she's necessarily going to stop getting hit at home. There's probably going to be more beatings at home. I'm like, yes, just because she's hitting you doesn't necessarily mean like it's okay for you to hit her more. You taught the kid this. Just like you taught them the language. I was telling this in Swahili, just like we taught them language, just like we taught them how to walk. They've looked around and seen what other adults are doing, what other people are doing, and then they start doing those things too. So you get to this point, what are you supposed to do in these situations? I've read some material about how you try to go back and solve these situations. This is why I'm saying if you're going to be a parent, please start from the beginning to learn about peaceful parenting and do it from the start. Don't start escalating these things. Because you don't just start all of a sudden, something happens to your kid and you're on the street with a long stick hitting the kid in public. Things build up. So after that happens, we're still sitting there talking. Other people are coming by. We're trying to get this girl to move. And I'm like, I don't know what to do in this situation. People are walking by. This girl is there and she's still kind of sitting on the ground. Something happens with the mother during this conversation where you can see the frustration. She starts kind of, while we're trying to talk, once I've gotten the stick away from that one lady, other people kind of came in. We're kind of trying to talk and catch people up on what's going on. That woman gets frustrated, grabs the kid, pulls the kid to the ground, and starts hitting the kid. And because the other people had been saying, you don't just hit her. Instead of just hitting the kid to keep them at the house, unamchuna, they sing this pinching thing. You pinch them in order for them to stop. And it's good to get a bit graphic here, but she gets this kid on the ground, and you could tell it seemed like she was going between the legs towards the groin crotch area to pinch the girl. And while hitting her, she was just, without the stick, she was on the ground, just wailing on the girl. And I jump in and I pull them apart. And this is when other people start coming in. A few men came in, and they said, "Okay, this is enough." There was a few people up the street kind of watching. I think a guy had been watching for a while. He came across, and they were saying, "Okay, this is enough. She said, let me help you take this person. So we're trying to get her out now. You can tell she's frustrated. This mother is crying. And I'm telling her, look, I understand you're trying to help this person. I understand you said that, look, sometimes this girl has disappeared. She's explained how there was a time this girl disappeared. She was caught out there with people, and then some other people who know her told her that they saw her daughter out there. She'd been disappeared for a while. She was with somebody. There's people who are kidnapped. There's people who sleep on the street. They're sexually assaulted. There's abuse that happens to people. So she's trying her best. She's saying she's got her kid at home. She left her kid at the house, had somebody step in to look after the kid. She's frustrated. I know there's some embarrassment for people watching her doing this way. People don't want to be in this kind of situation. You can tell she's at the end of the rope. She's probably those people who are living on dollars a day. I'm trying to think, like, what are you supposed to do in a situation like this? Do I think, like, am I just going to stop? Can I just stop and go to the gym? Or should I take these people to their house? Like, I don't know where they live. It's in this area. This girl's on the ground crying. He's been assaulted. This guy comes in and says, look, we also kind of understand that, hey, if this lady is willing to beat the child like this in public, how much is she beating the kid at the house? So this girl herself, you could tell why she doesn't want to go to the house, because she probably knows she goes to the house, the beating is going to continue or even be worse than it is there. So this guy comes out from a bus. This guy, and there's some people who ask for money in different ways, and this lady came by. She's kind of this really old, this really old lady in a wheelchair being pushed by somebody. She said, "Okay, what's going on here?" And she said, they're trying to get the little girl to speak to her and trying to get her to go. And then they started talking about how Kanso, she was like, somebody said, look, saying, okay, we'll call the police if this happened. I mean, if you keep doing like this, if you make your mom get to the point where she's this angry, this is what they're saying. And this is no situation. The kid's not making the mom do this. The kid is a child. It's on adults to kind of get the decision. But now with the adults themselves, adults have their own issues. Her whole personal issue, I'm almost 99.9% sure the mother herself, was also physically abused as a child. So she's carrying that on. So it's like, where do you get to this point? She has a stress level. I don't know how intelligent she is. I don't know how aware she is of these things. I don't know what her personal belief system things are. They seem to be Muslim. Like I said, they were wearing some of the gear with like the Muslim kind of hijab type things. But there was a part where that extra cloth she had put it around the girl's neck and twisted it and was pulling her. Like, then... Anyway, so to finish this up, they were talking about this situation, and they were like, okay, if this happens, your mom can get thrown in jail because she's in public doing this kind of situation. So there's some kind of influence in that. There's some kind of situation. But she was just saying, look, my people in my family don't beg. This is not what we do. We don't ask for money this way. We're not on the street asking for money. Because I said, why does she go down there? Why is she down there with the kids? What is she doing down there? Why was she refusing to come to the house? And she's saying she's just there begging. She's just down there with those kids begging. And that's what I'm saying. That lady who came up, she's got a home. She's housed, probably living in the slum somewhere, but they come out in the streets and they just beg for money. And she was saying, like, this older lady on the wheelchair was saying that they normally will have the lady in the wheelchair, and then they'll have what's it called? They'll have somebody else pulling them along. They'll have some blind person have a younger person kind of getting them along, and the younger person will be on getting the money. And maybe with this girl, I understand. I think people would understand, like, boys will get less money from begging than girls will. I think she had a look. I think people will be able to tell that she's a bit slow. So people might be able to say, oh, this is a handicapped person, and it will pull somebody's heartstrings a bit more to get the money. So there might be a potential where the kids down there understand, like, having her down here helps these things. They could going further with different kind of things of abuse, because kids at those ages do different weird things. They could be getting into sexual abuse or having a female down there. There's all kinds of things mixed up in the situation. I think this is a single mother, because there was no mention of the father involved in this situation. But they start talking about, this older lady starts saying, "Ukuna kanso pale chini. Sasa kama utarudi pale utashikwa, utawekwa ndani." So that's the city council people part of the government, part of the state government. They normally go around. Sometimes they'll show up and then they'll pick up people. If they can catch somebody begging on the street, selling, hawking, and things like this, they'll get those people and throw them in jail, or just there's other things that would happen to these people. Because look, this one of these guys starts saying, "Okay, tutaita police, tutaita utawekwa ndani," and then the kid starts looking around, like looking down. She's trying to look down the street to see if there's actually somebody down there, because she understands what counsel is. She understands. She seemed to understand that level of that. That seemed to bring some kind of fear into her mind of what could happen in that kind of situation. And I started wondering, like, has she been caught before by the police? Or is the police kind of a boogeyman put in that kind of situation where people understand at that level, maybe they have different interactions with the police? I've had very few interactions with the police here in Kenya. I'll discuss those in separate videos, maybe. But me, I normally just keep my nose out of stuff. I don't like interacting with police all over the place. In the United States of America, I have had some few interactions with them there as well, too. Normally just... anyway, different videos. But in this situation, I'm wondering, why did she have this strong fear, or why did that somehow click in her mind? Has she been seen or being with those kids and things? Maybe when the police came there, those kids run, and that's ingrained in her. That's something that she also has an experience. Maybe she's understood, maybe she's been caught and hit by police or things like that, or the people, because she started looking around, and then she's like, okay. Then she finally got up, and then the mother finally got up and was able to get her and to walk now to cross the street to get a bus. And you could see the girl was still kind of apprehensive, but she was also crying at the same point. She was crying a bit, but she was going. She wasn't fighting back. She wasn't trying to bite her hand, her mother's hand. And then started walking down with a few of the people who were there, and I just said thanks to the people who had helped. And finished jogging down to the gym, did my legs, squats, deadlifts, the hip thrust things, like, what else? What else was it? Calf raises, and just like these things where you do like the face pull, then you lift up. You put two of this, anyway. So did my session. This whole thing is on my mind the whole time. Coming back, took the pictures of the area where it happened, tried to understand what had just happened, try to see how I would voice this out, how I would communicate this, how I would ask and seek. And then got back, and here's the video. So that's what happened on my walk to the gym. So many questions, so many things messed up with it. Like, did I help at all? Like, I feel like getting in there, yes, the person wasn't hit, but I'm probably never going to see these people again. Did that help at all in that person's life? Was it just like a waste of time? Should I just been like the other people and just walk by? If I had like a bicycle, or if I had taken a little different path, I would have walked in a different way, and I would have not seen this. I would have not stopped to talk to these people. And maybe nothing could happen, or could I just seen it and kept going? The music could have been too loud. It could have been a situation where I was doing my interval sprints, and at that point I could have been running by and not seeing the person and just kind of gone by. So now that I decided to stop and decided to have this whole situation, have this whole communication and do this, did I help at all? Had those people at all heard, they might be another option. Maybe if I was better prepared and had some other kind of thing or something, I would have offered something. Maybe if I had set up some kind of system where I could be like, look, here are suggestions of people to stop, different ways to get away from hitting kids. And I could be like, okay, here's a card, here's a website, here's my number, here's a hotline, here's something you can call and actually do that. That would probably help a lot more than me just showing up there and be like, don't hit the person. Because I'm like, oh, if I decided to hit you, and seeing the way these other people stopped, and why did other people stop? Why did some not? Why did this gentleman decide to come by and do the whole calling thing? Why did that actually work on this kid? Could we have actually found a way to talk to this girl anymore, or sat down and thought, maybe if she decides to go down and hang out with these kids who are afraid, or these people down there who are afraid of the city council, of these kind of people, that would have been the way. Maybe if we could communicate and talk better in a better way, there's all these things, and I'm like, So we get to the gym, I do all that. So all these things I'm thinking like, okay, was it a waste of time? I don't think it was a waste of time. I think I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I was able to have here this conversation with you guys. And talk to this, and maybe you guys can give some suggestions. Like I said, the questions like, was engaging wise? Would you have engaged? Do you think it was a good decision to do that? How different do you think you'd have gone about it? Do you think when you engage in situations like this, do you think you need to be able to provide at least one possible solution or other thing in order to correct somebody? And why do you think people don't do this more? Why do you think people know? Because I'm personally going to admit I've seen this happen before. I've seen kids being hit before around me and not said anything. I know relatives who've hit their kids and I didn't say anything. I want to change it. I want to be able to talk about this thing more because I think, like I've talked about this in a previous video, I was talking about this in a Jeffrey Epstein video, who was this apparently very evil man who's done horrible things to children, and a lot of other people have seemingly engaged in this kind of behavior. We know historically it's been a lot worse for kids. This is still the best time to ever be alive for children that we know of. It's been a lot worse. Whether you're saying it's been a lot worse and had reasons, because that's what the lady was saying. That's what the woman was saying. Do you want me to just leave her here? You want me to just leave her and she goes there and she gets kidnapped? What if she's walking to the street? And I say, yes, if she's walking to the street, you're allowed to restrain this person. And I was thinking maybe if she could find a way to like maybe grab the hands from the back where you hold someone's across someone's hand this way and you hold them from the back, and maybe she could carry her that way. And then that way she's not necessarily able to bite the hands, but I couldn't explain that in really way. I couldn't explain that without actually putting hands on someone, and then like maybe I could have described it on a man who could come up and something, and that could have been a better way to kind of explain this thing. But yeah, so I understand if there's direct danger, yeah, you're allowed to grab your kid. If your kid is walking to the street, I don't mind grabbing the kid and pulling them back, but it's better to be able to have communication with your kid, be more aware of your kid to the point where they don't get to that point. Because I'm like, for you to get to this kind of escalation point, a lot has happened in the past. Now, she's made a lot of mistakes, in my opinion, in raising that kid to that point. But is it like living in the slums? Is that what she has to do? Does it mean in the past, when kids were treated in a lot worse ways, we know, even if you don't believe in gods and religions and things like that, we know for a fact that kids were sacrificed to gods. We know for a fact that there were situations, this has been a recent thing in China, they had that one-child policy, kids were just being killed. We know whether you want to understand where people land on the whole like abortion thing, if it's a life or not, we understand the situations where kids get aborted. Like this kid, she had some deficiencies, some handicaps. She said the kid at home had some other handicaps. There's ways of actually testing these things and seeing them as the kid develops. So we know in the United States of America, even people who are not necessarily pro-abortion, there's a lot of situations where they'd be like, okay, your kid has like a 90% chance of having this. They're like, okay, I'll abort. They can find these things out very early. Is that an okay thing? There's also kids who've lived through that and then it's turned out they've been relatively okay, or they hadn't even had that thing, that 10% situation comes by, or they come out with that situation, yet they're still able to achieve a lot in their life. So would people support getting to a situation where we could edit genes to get to a point where we can edit some of these things out, where it's like, okay, your kid has this. So instead of it being abortion, you can pay this amount of money and we can edit the genes and this handicap is taken away. Would somebody say no to that? So many questions and things I kind of say that's why it's a good time to be alive, because some of these things are being discussed. We can have these conversations, we can have these discussions, we can try to engage in these different ways and try to understand these things. So despite all of this, these decisions of I could have left at this time, I could have done this time, and then this negative thing happened, and this thing's brought stress to me, but it's a lot less stress than that kid who's actually being hit, a lot less stress than the mother who has to hit her kid, who felt she has to hit her kid in that situation. Just trying to understand, just seeing how, supposedly, from what I saw, the men who came up did not encourage hitting the child. The women who came up, I think there was one woman didn't mention anything, but from what I saw, the people who supported the hitting of the child were the women. And that's one thing you'll find all around the world. This could also be partially due to the fact that women spend more time around the kids, but women go to physical abuse on children a lot faster than they do, than men do. It's a lot more common to hear the mother has been hitting the kid than the father has been hitting the kid. Now, this is the thing, it's a domestic violence kind of situation. This is why a thing where it's like the parent is so much bigger, so much more powerful than the kid that they do that. And it normally ends to the point where the kid gets big enough where it's a threat back to the kid. And this is the same thing with people who have been abused, people who are abusive, that happens. part of the reason why men in domestic violence situations between adults, the men hit more because the men are bigger. The women make that calculation in their mind that I'm going to use other means to like attack this person. I'm not going to go out and hit this person because this person, if they engaged, it would be a lot more harmful to me. I'll definitely lose this situation. But when it comes to kids, they hit a lot more. So with all this happening, with all that happened, with me thinking times I could leave and all this and that, I end up going to the gym, started walking back, same kind of route I come back. On the way back, I'm walking and somebody taps me, and it turns out to be this guy, this friend of mine, or this acquaintance. He's might be friends now. He's an artist that I met here some years back when I was trying to start some kind of project and have something in mind. Met with him a few times, still follow him on some social media platforms, and we kind of reconnected that way, found out he's now living closer. So if I had done one thing different, if I had changed maybe even 1 second, just, I guess we walked down this stretch of road that we walked down on was maybe a 15-second kind of stretch, but maybe he was inside. So maybe cutting the 15-second walking down this road, okay, from where he said he lived, from the start of that road all the way into the mall, there seemed to be maybe about a 1 minute strip where we could have actually reconnected and seen each other, but actually see each other and have him recognize me and stop me and have the conversation. So he ends up doing that. So that's at least one thing that I'm thinking is entirely positive, because I think some really positive things can come by with some of the ideas that I want and have. Because one thing I'm trying to do is get to a situation where, like I said, I took photos of this situation where I can get in a situation like that and kind of connect that and have some kind of story and way where people can learn about this, because I think it's sharing these stories, sharing this information, sharing better ways to do different things can actually change some of these things. Because somebody else might have a better solution to this. Somebody else might see that story, see what happened there and be like, I'm going to avoid the situation. Somebody else might live a better life. Some kid might not be hit. If I can do something where I feel like I've done this and so one person tells me I didn't hit my kid anymore because you did this, or I've tried to do peaceful parenting because of this, I've been in a better situation. I think for me that's something that would make me feel better. So I'm not. I have my own selfish needs. I like feeling better about things. I like helping other people, and then the feeling that comes from helping people is a positive thing. I'm not doing it just for that, but it's part of what I like from it. I'm not afraid to admit that. And yeah, so that's my story about today. I'm going to put this in the playlist of, like I said, the hands up, don't hit thing. I'm going to try my best to kind of collect some information, that whole website thing. Try to get at least one location where I'm like, okay, here's a lot of information I have on peaceful parenting and different ways to do things. I may not agree with all of it, but I think it's all working towards a different thing, and people can kind of come and source it and find stuff. So let me know what you guys think in the comments with the questions. Should you engage? Should I have engaged? Would you have engaged? Would you have done things differently? Do you feel like in order to engage, you should do this when you have an answer, a solution, or just engage anyway? And do you think there's appropriate times? I just want to see. This also helps me try to understand. If you think, or you can just think up, it could be a thought experiment, something you might not believe, something might have come up in your life as well where you had a challenge and you just want to list, and maybe other people can come in and get their crack at how to solve these situations. Do you think you can point out situations where hitting a child is okay, where in this situation, threatening to strangle a child and then actually wrapping something around them and pulling them by the neck and hitting them with a stick and wailing on them in public and pinching them and things like that is a positive thing, is the thing to do. And again, I understand, I have a strong belief that everybody does, most people, 99.9% of people, there might be sociopaths or psychopaths who have a different kind of mentality in it, but they wake up in the morning or before they do something, they think, this is the good thing for me to do at this point. It may not actually be good in the general. I think there actually is things where you can say this is actually objectively good or bad. I do actually believe there's actually objective truth where more positive and something's more negative. But this is an analogy I like using. Sometimes, like I could have a peanut allergy, a vicious peanut allergy, and I'm walking down the street or I'm just on the side of the street dying if I don't eat something in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to die. Somebody comes by and all they have is a peanut butter sandwich, and then they feed me that peanut butter sandwich because they think this person is dying. I'm going to try to help this person with what I have, these peanuts or this peanut butter sandwich. And they give it to me, and that peanut butter sandwich kills me immediately. That person is still trying to help. They're not doing that because they think this is definitely going to kill the person. Where if they knew I had a peanut allergy, I don't think they would have done that. They would have maybe tried to get some other food. They would have sat there with me as I died that last 30 minutes or something else. But I don't think that person would have thought this action I'm doing is to kill this person. So even when it comes to somebody killing somebody, they think killing this person is, they've somehow rationalized killing this person is better than letting this person live, maybe because they're trying to kill me, maybe because they've done something bad, like they've abused children like Jeffrey Epstein, and like, okay, this person needs to die. Or they get in a situation where they're in a wartime situation, because even in wartime, it took a lot of actual mental anguish to actually get people to shoot back at people who are actually shooting at them. So there's just so much that goes into this situation. So I understand, like I told this mother, I understand that she was doing what she was doing because she didn't want this girl to come to more harm, that she thought if I don't hit this girl, there's going to be more harm to her. So that's the thing. If you guys can think of situations, let me know. Thank you for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. Let me know below. Send me sources that you guys have in Peaceful Parenting. The rest of the Peaceful Parenting playlist is there. I'll be updating things in there. There's also merchandise. I have a series of merchandise that's going to come towards the Peaceful Parenting series. The Hands Up Don't Hit merchandise is already up. That's one way you can help this channel, is by sharing these videos, also going to the merchandise store and buying some merch. And I think just walking around with that, and then, hey, you win the Hands Up Don't Hit shirt. That's all you do. You don't even have to engage with people. Just have the Hands Up Don't Hit shirt. If somebody comes up and asks you, then maybe you send them to the Hands Up Don't Hit playlist, or you just say you're a proponent of peaceful parenting, and then maybe I have the website set up and people can come and see more information there. So yeah, like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye.
So I'm going to give you guys some thoughts and things I wanted to add as I was editing the video. So I mentioned Montgomery County, and moving around to different places, seeing different things, is giving me a certain perspective on things, a certain different point of view. And Montgomery County being one of the wealthiest counties in the United States of America, the people who are in that county will vote for certain policies, will claim to support certain things. But I recently saw a news story about affordable housing being built in Montgomery County, and people were complaining against that. Some people were complaining about that. Yet, you ask a lot of people in that county, and they would probably vote and support these things. But when it comes to them, it's a different thing. You see this person who is probably a single mother. She's out there. I remember going to the Women's March and just seeing different issues and things brought up by Americans talking about poverty and the struggle. And it doesn't mean you're not struggling in your own way, but to see this woman with her lot in life and the things she's struggling through, and then I look at some of the people in the United States of America and the things they claim are struggles. They claim needs government intervention. They need redistributive policies. They need this much more money to come towards this thing. They're being mistreated by this thing because they don't have XYZ. And she's out here on the street trying to get this girl back to her house and the life that this person has had, yet kids in the United States of America are saying, oh, we're abused with this, we're depressed by this, we're medicating our kids because of this. So yeah, sure, you might not be hitting your kids as much, but hey, it's the most medicated country in the world, probably. I don't know. You need to check the figures on that. But just kind of seeing these multiple different things happening, and just trying to understand what's happening with this kind of situation. What's going on? Why do certain people have to live like this or end up living like this, and other people can also live in a different way, yet those other people seem to complain more than these people? Now, I'm not saying if you have a blister, it doesn't hurt compared to somebody who has a broken leg. You should stop feeling that pain. But a blister is not a broken leg. That's just all I'm saying. Pain is pain, but there's levels to the pain. Now, with this different levels thing, this is part of why it's very important for me to focus on this peaceful parenting. Because I think, like, okay, let's say somebody's born and genetically both their parents are 6'2", the man is 6'2", the mom is 6'6". So genetically this kid has the coding to be 6'5". But the kid ends up being malnourished and things like that, and that kid ends up being 5'5". Now, had the ability to be 6'5", but due to the malnourishment that the kid had, maybe he was malnourished, he was abused, he was neglected, broke his legs, the growth plates affected in a certain way, and it changed his possible max height. Now, when it comes to child abuse, when it comes to neglect, when it comes to hitting kids, there's been studies showing that it affects your IQ. Now, this is not necessarily saying it's going to limit. There's epigenetic changes, there's all of these things going through with this kind of information. There's a lot of information out there, and I'll start collecting some of that information. But I'm thinking part of the struggles in developing countries in certain places in the world might be tied to hitting the children. Now, somebody like this girl who was mentally handicapped, they even require that even more. Because, like I talked about with a kid who has tall parents, so even if that kid is actually handicapped in certain ways, malnourished, they can still get to 5'5", they can get to 5'7", they can get to 5'9", which is the average height, yet it's still 6-7 inches shorter than they would have actually achieved without that malnourishment. Now, if you have some kid who's already from short parents and that kid gets malnourished, both the parents are under 5'5", that kid will now be under 5 foot. So it's an even bigger struggle. It's even more important if somebody's more limited in that way. So now, if there are differences in different groups of people in their potential IQ, their potential ability to deal with certain things, then having them, you have a kid who's raised into a situation with poverty, doesn't have as many access to resources, doesn't have certain benefits, doesn't have a certain environments that other kids might benefit from. Whenever you have those extra things to deal with, I think peaceful parenting is even that much more important. It should be important for everyone, but when you have those challenges already, adding extra limitations of that adverse childhood is probably going to end up in a worse result for those kids. So I'm thinking there might be an ability where you just see like, hey, once we're all parenting in the same way, people are selecting partners in more peaceful manners, people are able to communicate and discuss with what they can and understand and not fear conversing with people, not be so distrustful of people, and just build a stronger community. Because globalization is coming, we're all joining each other, we're becoming this human species, these earthlings, and I think part of that is having certain global customs of how we raise kids, and I think peaceful parenting needs to be a big part of that. So thanks.